Hello, hello, hello. We are live. We are live. We are live today. Listen, I'm not going to hold you long today. Hopefully, you were here yesterday for session number one of this awesome 2 day intensive. The intensive is called The Art of Surrendering to Healing. Yes, that's what it's called. It is called Soul Care 101. All right. So if you were here yesterday, you heard all the good news about setting boundaries and all those things. But we're going to dive much deeper today. So I'm Rachel Harper. I help experts, leaders, and entrepreneurs heal, grow, and reset by communicating their emotions, creating healthy boundaries, and reconnecting with their peace. Now, as far as today, the only expectation for today is that you have pen and paper. I hope that you set the atmosphere where you are and allow yourself to actually get get take hold of all of these notes, all right, for yourself, because it is necessary. Listen, everything that I'm teaching you today, it is necessary for your relationships. It's necessary for the relationship you have intimately, the relationship you have as a parent, the relationship that you have with yourself, most importantly, right? And the relationship you have with people on your job, right? But what we're talking about and diving into deep today is how to build that relationship up with yourself first. One of the mistakes we often make is we try to figure out, how do we create space and time for everybody else? How do we, get everybody else comfortable? How do we figure out what everybody else need, and then we leave ourselves behind? Especially if you are a parent, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're an expert or a leader. Most of the time, what happens to us is we fall into that trap of hustle culture. Hello, yeah. We fall into that trap of hustle culture. We fall into that trap of trying to build the life that we want while neglecting the life that we have. And so I want to make sure that you, as an individual, you know exactly what you need and you know how to get it. All right. So let's jump right into it. If you were here yesterday, I left you with some homework. And so let's do a quick homework recap. So, yesterday I told you to go ahead and write down your values and your beliefs. Okay. Because today, your values and your beliefs is the first thing of setting yourself up to know exactly what you want. How many times have you struggled with answering that question? What do you even want? Right? Or maybe the seasons change and what you want one season is not the same thing that you want in a different season, right? Maybe that's happened before. And so I just think about, even in my marriage, right? Even in my marriage, there's seasons where I want something in one season and then I want something else in another season, right? And so being able to actually be an expert on myself is important for me to have a healthy relationship with my husband. But the same thing goes not just with having a healthy, intimate relationship with other people, but having an intimate relationship with yourself and being an expert on you. It is critical. So, yesterday was day one. I told you to write down your values and your beliefs. Here's an example of how to do that. All right. So, an example would be, I believe God created the earth, so I value servicing people. All right. That's how you understand your values and your beliefs, because that is important. Because depending on where you go, what room you walk in, what setting you're in, you want to make sure that you know you. Nobody else is going to always know you. We oftentimes put other people's feet to the fire and want them to know who we are and want them to understand us, but then we don't even know ourselves, right? So knowing your values and your beliefs is the first step to stepping into that place, stepping into the arena of saying, "Listen, I know me better than you know me." And there's no doubt about that, all right? Another example, I believe that rest is good for the soul. Therefore, I value alone time. Yes, right? So if I look at that, my values and my belief, I believe in real life, this was mine. I believe that rest is good, right? I was a teacher at one point. I felt burnt out. I felt overwhelmed. I felt stressed. And I know better now. I know better to get to that point. So my new belief is, listen, rest is good. It's good for the soul. It's good for the body. So therefore, I value my alone time. I value my alone time. I value alone time, especially in the morning. I value alone time from time to time, right? That's my thing. That's my thing. So when it comes to my husband, when it comes to my children, when it comes to my relationships in that manner, listen, sometimes I'm not going to answer my phone. There are moments where I just want to be alone. And my husband, originally, he used to get offended by that. like, I'm your whole husband. How is it you want to be alone? You don't want to be around me all the time? No, not all the time. No, let's be real. All right. It's been almost 10 years. We're good on that. I need the value. Like, so this is why it's important to know you. This is why it's important for you to know your values and your beliefs. Because guess what? If I never got my rest and my husband never understood my values or my beliefs, then I would feel like my boundaries are being stepped over. Right. And I might have that resentment, that anger, that bitterness. Like, why isn't anybody listening to me? And then I'm always got to be around a kid and I never get to be alone. So that was your homework. That was just a recap. Knowing your values, knowing your beliefs, it is important for you to be an expert on yourself. That's the first step. Okay. Now, when you don't do that, you're going to struggle with setting boundaries. And that's the conversation we're having today: how to actually set boundaries, create healthy boundaries. So let's jump right into it. So, though many talk about boundaries, there seems to be this apprehension, right, about implementing them in our lives. There's often this time where we take this concept of boundaries and we make this conversation, oftentimes, it's incomplete. So, what do I mean? We've taken the idea of boundaries and we've made people out to feel as if they must be these big bad wolves in order to have boundaries, right? Because what are we always hearing? We're always hearing people say, listen, to set a boundary, everything just has to be no. Just tell everybody no. And that's oftentimes how I hear the conversation. Maybe you hear the conversation like that as well, but that's how I always hear the conversation about boundaries. It's like you're just supposed to be just walking around just telling everybody no. No, I ain't doing this. No, I ain't doing that. No today, no yesterday, and no tomorrow. We ain't doing none of that. Right? And so that's the conversation. And so while that's not incorrect, not completely incorrect, I will say it is incomplete. Boundaries, it is so much wider than that. There's so much more to it. And the reason why we oftentimes don't implement it is because many times we're afraid to even we think it's going to be a confrontation, right? Telling somebody no and just letting it be that. So you hear people say, hey, no is a complete sentence. Yeah, it is most of the time or some of the time, but not all the time. So how can we actually change this narrative to create healthy boundaries a little bit easier? All right. So that's what we're going to talk about, because society, again, they want you walking around big bad wolf telling everybody no. Is a lot more to the conversation than that. So before you build a boundary, change your mindset about boundaries. I want to get into that before I give you any tactics about boundaries, about how setting up your boundaries is supposed to work. We have to make sure that we're on the same page when it comes to boundaries, okay? Because one of the things it says, do not conform to this world, right? So we want to make sure that we are setting healthy boundaries and not just walking around telling everybody no, because that can actually be dangerous. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So, what are the advantages of boundaries? It's a few of them. So, the first one, it defines appropriate behavior, right? So, who's allowed around you, who's not allowed around you, what people, places, or things are allowed around you, or even just using that word appropriate behavior, right? So that's an advantage of having a boundary. I get to say what is appropriate and what's appropriate to be in my bubble. Like, this is allowed, this is appropriate, or listen, this is not appropriate. I'm going to either remove myself or I'm going to, tell you to remove yourself, one or the other. So that's one. Number two, another advantage to having boundaries is that it protects your life. It protects your life. So boundaries is considered a form of self-care. Okay. So self-care are things like faith, hope, love, your character, your perseverance, right? I know we often hear self-care to be bubble baths and journaling and all those things, but let's take it up another level. Self-care is also things like faith, right? It's things like hope. It's things like love. It makes you feel safe, right? Boundaries is also a form of soul care. So a lot of people don't know that there is a difference between self-care and soul care. So your self is you, right? It's your faith, your hope, your love. Your soul, however, is your experiences, it's your mind, your heart, your will, your imagination, it's your thoughts, it's your desires, your passions, and your dreams. It's all of those things. Now, how do we know the difference between self-care and soul care? It's in Hebrews. Now, I went over that yesterday, so make sure you go back and watch that tomorrow or later after this, okay? Well, I talked about that. So it's mind, heart, will, imagination, all those things. But then number three, a third advantage of boundaries is that it helps build positive relationships. That's critical. If you are an expert, a leader, an entrepreneur, if you are a parent, being able to have those positive relationships, it is necessary, it is critical to your well-being because none of us are supposed to be alone. All right. How do I know? Because it says that in Genesis. It says it's not good for man to be alone. Not only is it in the Hebrew in Genesis, but we also seen it when the pandemic hit. A lot of us, we didn't want to be alone, right? And so when I know what you need and you know what you need, and we both provide it, we can then have a healthy relationship, right? Whether that's an intimate relationship, a relationship as a parent with your kids, a relationship as an employer and employee, right? So being able to build those positive relationships. Once I know what you need and you know what I need, and we actually agree to provide it to one another, we then can have a healthy relationship. All right. We won't be off balance. Now, here's a disadvantage to boundaries. You're probably like, wait a minute, a disadvantage to boundaries? Yes, there can be disadvantages to boundaries. So here's a disadvantage to not having boundaries, to disadvantage to boundaries. Not having them is a disadvantage to your life. When you don't have boundaries, people are capable of manipulating you, pushing their fears onto you, pushing their religion onto you. They're capable of doing all the things, and you'll just sit back and take it, right? So when you don't have boundaries, that is a disadvantage to your well being, to your mind, to your spirit, to your soul, and your relationship, right? And then having those one sided expectations. A lot of times, the reason why relationships fail is because one person had an expectation and a boundary, and it was either enforced or not enforced, and then somebody else either didn't care about the boundary or they just didn't care to implement it, right? So when we look at that one-sided expectation, that's why we say healthy boundaries. What is going to work for you? What'll work for someone else? And if it doesn't work for someone else, you have an option to say, well, this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work for me, right? So you have that opportunity. So let's move into our next section. So as we look at boundaries, today I was reading an article and the thing about that article, it really struck a nerve with me. It struck a bad nerve with me, right? They were talking about the different type of ways to build healthy boundaries. And one of the concepts that they said was this: decline anything you don't want to do. Decline anything that you don't want to do, just decline it. This is a dangerous concept, right? This is a dangerous concept about boundaries. Now, you might say, why would that be dangerous? Let me tell you why. It's dangerous because you don't give yourself the opportunity to stretch and grow. When you don't give yourself the opportunity to stretch and grow, especially as an expert, as a leader, as an entrepreneur, then you won't be able to get to the next level of your success. You won't be able to get to the next level of your success, right? Because as an expert, a leader, an entrepreneur, a parent, sometimes you have to do things that you don't want to do in order to stretch and to grow. So, case in point, here's an example. So, for example, I'm an entrepreneur, obviously, right? I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a business owner. And when it came to this event, I said, okay, I have to do an event. I want to teach. I haven't been in the classroom for a long time. I still love to teach. It's still my thing. It's still my gift. It's still my value, right? But I was trying to figure out how many days should I do it, right? So I was giving it a yes, but I was very close to giving it a no to doing it. Now, here's why. When I talk a lot, like yesterday was day one, I did a lot of talking, right? And so my voice almost goes out. Like again, I haven't been in the classroom for a long time, right? So I haven't been doing a lot of talking. So now I'm getting exhausted from doing a lot of talking, right? Now I have to make sure that even though I want to give talking a strong no, I had to give it a yes. Because if I'm going to work in my gift, if I'm going to work in my purpose, if I'm going to stretch, if I'm going to grow, if I'm going to grow my impact, my influence, or even my income, then you better believe, guess what? I got to be here. And so what I ended up doing was just compromising. I said I would just split everything I'm going to teach over the course of like 2.5 days, right? So Saturday we'll be back here. All right. That's the bonus session. But I decided, I listen, I'm going to do 2.5 days. So I could have easily just said no. No, just give it a no. I'm going to be tired. My voice is going to hurt. Like, I don't have time for all that. Like, they good. Everybody's good. I'm good. Right. But if I'm going to stretch and I'm going to use my gift and I'm going to answer the questions that I'm supposed to be answering in my generation, then guess what I got to do? I got to stretch. I can't just give everything a no. So when you hear that statement of them saying, "Hey, when it comes to your boundaries, decline anything you don't want to do. Just give everything a no." That's dangerous. Don't just give everything a no. Make it a calculated no from time to time, right? So I had to kind of calculate this. I had to give a calculated no. Don't do it all in one day, Rachel. Don't do 4 hours in one day, 2 hours in one day. Just break it up over time, right? Why? Because again, I value my rest. And my belief is that I will get rest and I don't want to overwhelm myself or burn myself out, right? So that's just an example. So the question is, how can you live in your abundance or your overflow if you never stretch yourself? If you never stretch yourself, how can you live in your overflow as an expert, a leader, an entrepreneur? You'll never be able to live in your overflow. You are not here to just live in scarcity. You are not here to live in lack. You are here to live in abundance, in overflow. That's what you're here for. You're here to answer somebody's question that God knew was going to be asked in this generation. And if you just give a no to everything, then sometimes you're going to miss your call. You're going to miss your opportunity and you're going to miss your shot. Now, again, everything that's for you won't miss you. However, listen, don't just give everything a no. Sometimes make it a calculated no or even a calculated yes. But that goes back to needing to know your values and your beliefs. And when you don't know them, then you will just tell everything no, or maybe even give everything a yes, because everything don't deserve a yes either. Let's be honest about that. Everything don't deserve a yes. Repeat after me. Everything don't deserve a yes. Okay, so let's remember that, so that we're not overwhelmed and stressed out and fatigued and have resentment that people are asking us questions and want to do the thing. Let's not do that. All right. So how can you live in your abundance or your overflow if you never stretch yourself? Right. The answer is you got to get uncomfortable. You got to get uncomfortable. There is a time and a place to say no. It should be based on your beliefs and your values. Pause. So if you didn't go do the homework yesterday, you need to do the homework. What are your values and your beliefs? Because you may be trying to set boundaries based off of what society is saying. They're telling you to say no to everything. And then you looking at your impact, your influence, and your income, and it doesn't look like what God told you it's supposed to look like. Because you saying no to everything and everybody when you're supposed to be calculating your yeses and your nos. But nobody's talking about that. But that's why I'm opening that door here. Know your values and your beliefs. And I'm not just talking about the 10 commandments. I'm talking about, what do you truly value for you? What do you truly believe for you so that your life can thrive, so that you can show up in spaces and thrive? All right. So get used to being uncomfortable. So, how can you change the concept of decline anything you don't want to do in your life? How can you change that concept? Again, it's not always asking what you need to say no to, but determining what you should or can say yes so you can stretch, grow, grow. So, you might have seen me wearing my sweatshirt. It says heal, grow, reset. That means I got to heal beyond my past, grow in my present, and reset for my future if I'm going to make this thing work. Right? I got to heal beyond my past. What boundaries am I lacking? Maybe because of where I grew up at, or the community I was raised in, or the parent who maybe didn't provide something, right? So let me heal beyond my past so I can actually get some real boundaries in place, get to know myself, become an expert on me. Then let me grow right now in my future. Let me grow right now in my present. If you are an expert, a leader, an entrepreneur, that means you're a teacher, you're a chef. That means you work in government, you work in the arts, you work in education, maybe you work in ministry, right? Make sure you have that. Okay. So you want that impact, that influence, and that income. So stop creating walls and then calling them boundaries. Another mistake that we do. Stop creating walls and then calling them boundaries. That's how you can change that concept of say no to everything. You're so used to putting up walls and leaving everybody out, and maybe even leaving all the bad stuff in, and the people who's not supposed to be around you, and the concepts and the conversations that's not supposed to be around you, the environments you're not supposed to be in. You got them on the wall with you, but all the good things and all the other things, you got them on the other side of the wall. You're not supposed to be building walls. You're supposed to be building boundaries. And boundaries are like a fence, right? And what do fences have? They typically have a gate. That means I allow things in and allow things out. I get to observe what's coming in and I get to say what has to leave. That's it, right? So don't build up walls, because one thing about building up walls, you're going to build up walls around your heart. And that's going to cause you to have that stress, anxiety, that fatigue, that frustration, that anger, that bitterness, that resentment. It's going to cause you to have that loneliness and all the things that you don't want. It's going to end up being built up because you're keeping everybody out and the bad things in. You're building up walls. Your heart is emotionally bleeding and you're just trying to figure out what's going on with your life. Audit your life. Check yourself. Are you building up walls or are you building up boundaries? Which one are you doing? So today's going to be a short conversation because now we're in the last section. How can you begin to build a healthy boundary? So let's talk about it. So we want to know how to build a healthy boundary because, again, we don't want to just build walls and keep everybody out. We don't want to keep the bad things in. We want to be able to build up a boundary or a gate that has a fence that has a gate so that things can go flow. It can flow, right? Because seasons are also going to change. Things are going to change and things may be different from one season to the next, right? And so I want you to know how to build a healthy boundary. So what you're going to do is you're going to define your boundaries. Define your boundaries. You're saying that you're setting up boundaries and you don't even know what they are, right? So how can you figure out what your boundaries are? So before I say knowing your values and your beliefs, that's true. Now I'm going to give you some questions because you might have struggled with the homework last night. Maybe you didn't know what your values and your beliefs were. Maybe you struggled with that, right? So let's see that. Let me give you some questions. So here are your steps. It's going to be 3 steps. Step number 1 is your reflection. You're going to reflect. Step number 2, you are going to identify your safety net. And then step number 3, you are going to identify your stressors. So let's talk about it. Step 1 is reflection. Here are some questions to answer in order to start building up your boundaries, your values, and your beliefs. So some questions that you can answer. Number 1, what is causing me stress or discomfort right now? So that self-assessing, being self-observant, being the expert on you is critical for you to be able to answer these questions, right? So what is causing me stress or discomfort right now would be a question. What do I look forward to each day? Like, what is something that makes you happy? What's something that makes you excited? What is something that you're like looking forward to, whether that is a person, a place, or a thing? What are you looking forward to each day? What are you looking forward to each day? Another question you can answer. What do I dread each day? You might say, I dread my job. You might say, I dread my job. Maybe you do, but I want you to take a deeper look. Maybe it's not the full gamut of the job. Maybe it's a small portion of your job. So when I worked as a teacher, when I worked as an educator, I loved teaching, but there were certain parts of it that I didn't enjoy, like having to build lesson plans, like having to always make a decision. I often had decision fatigue, right? And so sometimes it did make me feel like I just don't like any of it. But don't allow that to be your truth, right? What are some pieces of the thing that you dread that you maybe you like some pieces of it, but then there's just some pieces of it that you don't enjoy. Okay. So, what do I dread each day? Ask yourself, who or what gives me energy? What gives you energy? What breathes life into you? Because again, you want to define your boundaries. If you know what gives you energy, then you'll be able to answer the next question. You'll be able to know who or what drains you. So again, like I said, talking drains me. I'm only 25 minutes in and already my throat is like, right? So I know what drains me, but ironically, it also gives me energy being able to be here and talk to you all, right? So it gives me that opportunity to do that as well. To know what drains you so that you can create boundaries around that. Know what gives you energy. So again, you have that gate. You want more of the things that gives you energy. You want more of that in, and you want less of the things that drains you. You want it out. So again, we're not building up walls, because when you build up walls, you're taking away all the good stuff from you, and that's not fair to you. You don't want to take things away from you just because you want to build up a wall. Don't build up walls, build up boundaries. Answer another question in your reflection. Who or what makes me feel safe, supported, and valued? This is critical because there's going to be moments in your life where you're stressed, you have that anxiety, you have that fatigue, you have that frustration, right? All the things is going to happen where who or what can make you feel safe, supported, and valued, especially in those moments. So if you're trying to figure out what's going to make me feel valued, safe, and supported in those moments, then guess what? You need to know the opposite. Because when you're upset, you're triggered, you're fatigued, you're frustrated, you're angry, you don't want to be land in a space that's unsafe. You want to have boundaries, right? Because what's going to happen is you are going to, let's say, for example, you're angry and you want someone to talk to. You want to go to that place that feels safe. You don't want to go to the place that feels unsafe, unsupported, where you feel devalued, because a consequence of that is you not opening yourself up. And you're going to start holding all of your feelings in as if it's baggage. And then next thing you know, you're going to start saying, like, this is just who I am. This is just me. So now what's happening is the way you're feeling, maybe it's not showing up as depression, PTSD, or trauma, but it might start showing up as a character trait. It might start showing up as a character trait. Now everybody sees you as just this angry, mad black woman. I can't stand that concept. But you got to check yourself. Is what you're going through showing up as a character trait? This might not be showing up as, again, PTSD, might not be showing up as trauma, but maybe it is showing up as a character trait or a personality trait. And you're saying things like, it's just me. No, it's not you. You're actually hurt. So having a place that where it feels safe, where you feel supported, where you feel valued is critical. It's critical to your mind. It's critical to your emotions. It's critical to your well being. And you want to have a safe space to land. All right. So that's number one. Step number two, you want to be able to identify your safety net. Identify your safety net. Because again, in those moments, you want to have the right people in and the wrong people out of the way. The great thing about boundaries is that they put people in their proper position. They put people in their proper position. You're going to say, okay, this girl, she's good for gossiping. This one is good for, going out to brunch. This one right here is my, my ace boon. Like this one is my best friend. I know I can tell them anything. You want that. You want that in your life. You want that for yourself. Even if it's a husband, whoever it is, a friend at work, somebody that you can absolutely trust. You're going to need that in those moments where you feel, bothered, where you feel stressed, when your bank account maybe don't look the way you want it to look, when maybe the customer canceled on you, maybe when the school days just felt like a drag, maybe when somebody else, did whatever. You want to be able to have that safe space to be able to vent so that you're not holding all that on as baggage. So here are your questions. To create a safe space for yourself, you want to know who gives you hugs, who can you get hugs from loved ones, right? Don't think just because you're an adult that you can't get hugs from loved ones. You want to be able to get hugs from somebody. right? And if you can't find that person, even as an adult, it's possible to build new friendships even as an adult. Sometimes we stay stuck in our past, like no new friends. Sometimes it's okay. You might need some at least one new person, right? What about your walks in nature, right? Support from your partner. Like what makes you feel safe? These are examples. Hugs from loved ones, walks in nature. Does support from your partner make you feel safe? Does clear communication at work make you feel safe? Does petting your dog or your cat make you feel safe? Does having a daily routine make you feel safe, supported, and value? I know for me, having that daily routine, especially as a teacher, made me feel supported, right? I was able to support myself with having that daily routine, putting things on my planner and sticking to it as much as I could, right? What about, do you have time to pursue hobbies, sports, and other interests? Maybe that's you creating a safe space. So, if you're going to create a safe space, you know, gotta be able to identify your stressors as well. So, what would be some of those stressors? Here would be some examples of some things that might stress you. Maybe it's your friend asking to borrow money. Maybe it's your colleagues gossiping at work. Maybe it's your roommate using your stuff or eating your food without asking. Oh man, I remember those college days. Ugh, you be ready to eat something and then you go inside your kitchen or wherever your food is at, right? And it's gone. It's like, what the world? Working late instead of going to the gym, right? Can be an added stressor in your life. Worrying about what certain people really think of you could be a stressor. Your partner checking your phone calls and your text messages all the time, saying that you're doing things when maybe you aren't. Your mother telling you how to raise your children. Hmm. Or maybe someone calling you only when they have a crisis, right? They don't call and check up on you. They only call you when they have a crisis, right? So this is how you can take inventory and begin visualizing your boundaries. Because what are boundaries? Boundaries are the limits that we set for ourselves in our relationships with others. So I got to know what stresses me out. I got to know what is a stressor, right? And then I got to create boundaries around that. Now, today was session number 2. We're going to have a bonus session. A bonus session is going to have happen on Saturday. On Saturday, it will be the finale of this intensive. And so, if you are here 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, let me pull this up. If you are here Saturday Eastern Standard Time, then understand that the finale is going to be for you. This is a special invitation for you. Hopefully, you are on my email list because you'll receive some goodies from these 2 days of sessions. And then what's going to happen? I want you to actually, once this goes off, watch it back, go to the end. And what I want you to do is to actually answer those questions. If you are serious about setting healthy boundaries for you, then I want you to answer those questions, each of those sections of questions. Okay. Go through those steps so that you can start creating boundaries, knowing that we're reflecting on your life, having a good place to land, right? And then also knowing what things can't land in your life. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this homework from tonight, and on Saturday we're going to talk about how can you actually start to communicate your boundaries, because that's where things get tough. When we got to start communicating our boundaries and maybe not just always saying no. No, no, no. Because listen, there are different type of boundaries. There are actually 7 different types of boundaries. So the way that you communicate might need to be different, especially based on the environment that you're in, the age of the person you're talking to. All those things are going to matter. But no matter what, you're going to want to show up in any space knowing who you are. You want to be an expert on you. So don't put everybody else's feet to the fire and try to tell everybody else how to work you and how to do you. No, you know how to do you first before anybody else. Don't hold everybody else's feet to the fire. Hold your own feet to the fire and put your own self in check. All right. So Saturday, We will be back here at 12 p.m. sharp. Make sure that you are here. And again, if you are on the email list, look out for a PDF. It should be coming to you before Saturday, if not on Saturday. And so I'll look forward to seeing you on Saturday. Make sure you do the homework. Bring your homework. Watch session 1 back as well. Watch session 2 back as well. And then bring your questions to the session. I want to do a Q&A with you on Saturday at 12 p.m. All right, so that we can end this session for this month, because we're going into June and we need to go into June good. All right, so I will see you on Saturday. Have a good one. Oh, and before we go, make sure you tell me in the comments, what was your biggest aha moment? I should have said that in the beginning. What was your biggest aha moment, your biggest takeaway from this session? Because I want to know, what was your biggest aha moment? All right, I'll see you Saturday.